Members of the gallery, it is the appointed time for this council meeting to commence, and before opening the meeting I need to give you notice of meeting recording. Clause 91(4) of the Governance and Meeting Conduct Local Law provides the following. This public meeting is being recorded to improve access to the meeting for our community. The recording will be published and will be retained by Council in accordance with Council's legal obligations. As a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded during the meeting. I'll now declare the meeting open, and I'll acknowledge the traditional owners. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting. We pay our respects to their elders and to elders from other communities who may be here today. And the opening prayer. Almighty God, we humbly ask Thee to bless and guide this council in its deliberations so that we may truly preserve the welfare of the people whom we serve. Amen. Just before we start the order of business, I'd like the CEO to have a few words.
Thank you through the chair. There are a couple of faces at the table tonight that won't necessarily be familiar to everybody, so we thought we would do a couple of introductions.
Yeah, sure.
You will see those on the screen. Alan Clark is away at the moment and Ruth Kneebone is currently acting in that capacity, normally our Director of Corporate Services. Fiona Shanks, who's normally our Manager of People and Culture, is acting in the role of Acting Corporate Services Director, and Jackie Bright, Manager of Strategy and Growth, is filling in for Barry Green, who's away on leave in the Director of Development Services role. So just thought we would introduce those somewhat unfamiliar faces to you.
We have Barry Green and Alan Clark absent. There's no apology from councillors, no citizenship ceremony, confirmation of minutes of the meeting. 22nd of August 2016. Someone like to move that? Move Councillor Benton, second Councillor Amy. Any discussion? I'll declare the motion carried. Conflict of interest disclosure. Councillor Fuller.
With 16.1 tourism grants. Thank you.
16.1. Thank you. No petitions, no deputations. Councillor reports. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. I wanted to take this time to present a report from a councillor point of view, and my report is that 1 year ago, in September of 16, we made a commitment to change, to serve the community and to challenge my strong passion for the town and its surrounds. As such, I walked into the VEC pre-poll and nominated as a candidate. 1 month later, and with the support of 1,000 people, both known and unknown, I was fortunate enough to achieve my goal and to be able to swear an oath to undertake the duties of the office in the best interest of the people in the municipality. 1 year on, and I've attended functions, emceed events and spoken to various groups. Since Petrelbar in August, I've attended a food lab where the collective interest of producers and sustainability-minded community members came together to hear about food networking and mapping, followed by chairing the Showground Special Committee AGM, where I took an opportunity to thank them for their volunteering and to also congratulate Dennis Backus on his life membership status. Whilst I was working my day job on the night, its proximity to the event enabled me to witness some great community engagement with the Down by the River held last month. An equally highlighted night was the Small Business Festival, keynoted by Lydia Lasala, and my final August attendance was with colleagues in Melbourne, where we formed a bit of a networking group that would aim to bring together councillors from metro and rural municipalities. September has been a slightly low-key event so far, with an attendance at GoTAFE Initiative, showcasing their $250,000 Fab Lab, along with Councillor Bussell and Councillor Rees. We had an Eco Dev and Tourism Advisory Committee, and we also did a consultation with the public regarding the Municipal Health and Wellbeing Plan. And other highlights include the reopening of the Everton Hall and the first sitting of the newly inducted Youth Council. It is with this group in our community in mind that I take this opportunity tonight to speak to one topic, particularly one minority and one group I feel might be unsure of support available. I stand committed to the cause for equality, and I commend the number of local people who have supported this both online and more recently with the increase in publicity in public spaces, such as shop fronts. As my personal view supports the cause, I equally recognise the many sides of the debate and sternly encourage a polite discourse when discussing the subject. Through this plebiscite, I personally feel that a divide has been widened, and it's my concern that a younger generation of adults finding themselves in the world but ineligible to vote will miss this opportunity to voice their thoughts. I encourage them to use their voice to ask for help if required, to seek guidance and to hold tight throughout the process, and hopefully the end result will be a more tolerant understanding. I personally would prefer millions of dollars were not spent, and I hope that there is an equitable, fair and just outcome, and marriage equality is more than just a piece of paper for most of this community, that it directly affects the outcome. I implore all those yet to vote to consider a member of your life, your circle, that might benefit from a positive outcome in this vote, and I thank you for listening and those that have shown me support.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Moving along to the corporate services, related parties, 13.1, related parties and interest policy. Fiona.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report, the Related Parties and Interest Policy, is presented to Council tonight, and it finalises the process of adopting what is classified under our local law as a major council policy. For context, in 2014, Council adopted a Register of Interest policy that outlines the transparency requirement for councillors and council officers relating to conflicts of interest. In the last financial year, there have been changes to the accounting standards, which brought in new reporting rules that required certain key management personnel to make further declarations relating to transactions with related parties, and the guidelines outlined what qualified as a related party. Upon assessment of the two disclosure processes, we established that the same personnel, councillors and predominantly the senior council officers, were affected, and therefore it was recommended that rather than creating a new separate policy, the two policies be merged. Council has prepared its current 2016-17 financial year end, which is to be discussed a little later in accordance with this new accounting standard. Council has sought public feedback on this policy as per our major policy adoption guidelines. However, there were no submissions received from the community. It is now submitted to Council tonight, and it's recommended that Council adopts the Related Parties and Interest Policy 2017 and revokes the Register of Interest Policy, Returns Policy 2014.
Thank you. Any questions from the gallery? Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Fuller, Councillor Ruiz. Any discussion? I declare the motion carried. 13.2, capital projects. Thank you, Fiona.
The Capital Projects 2016 and 17 and carryovers report is presented to Council tonight to endorse the required carryover changes for the end of this financial year 2016-2017. For context, while Council appropriately tries to predict when expenses and income will occur on all our projects, there are things sometimes outside of Council's control that means a number of financial adjustments are required at year-end to enable the project to continue in the coming year. The details, there's quite a lot of detail in the report, and these have been set out and submitted tonight. So the recommendation is that Council 1 carries forward $869,379 from the 16-17 Capital Works budget allocations to the 2017-18 financial year. 2, reduces capital expenditure in the 2017-18 budget by $220,109 for capital projects commenced in the 2016-17 financial year. 3, reduces capital income in the 2017-18 budget for contributions and grant income received in 2016-17 of $174,005, and 4, carries forward $401,739 in net non-reoccurrent operating expenditure to the 2017-18 financial year.
Are there any questions from the gallery? Someone like to move the recommendations? Councillor Curry, Councillor Benton. Any discussion? I'll declare the motion carried. .3, the annual report.
The annual report and subsequent attachments are submitted to Council tonight for in-principle approval. The preparation of these statements goes throughout a number of reviews and audits, and the preparation of this year's documents is consistent with the past year process. The reason for the in-principle approval is that the Victorian Auditor General's Office is still to approve the year-end results, which is fairly common for this time of the year. We are also seeking approval by Council to authorise the Mayor and the listed councillor to sign the statements once any changes recommended by the Auditor General are made. These statements, once finalised, will be resubmitted back to Council in a final format for adoption, likely to be the October Council meeting. So the recommendation is that Council approves, 1, approves in principle the performance statement and financial statements for the Wangaratta Rural City Council for the financial year ending 30th of June 2017, as endorsed by the Audit Advisory Committee on the 5th of September 2017. 2, authorises the Mayor, Councillor Ken Clark, OAM, and Councillor Mark Curry to certify the performance statement and financial statements for the Wangaratta Council for the financial year ending 30th of June 2017 in their final form after any changes recommended or agreed to by the Auditor General have been made. 3, adopts the governance and management checklist for the Wangaratta Rural City Council for the financial year ending 30th of June 2017. And 4, authorises the Mayor, Councillor Ken Clark, OAM, to certify the governance and management checklist for the Wangaratta Rural City Council for the financial year ending 30th of June 2017.
Thank you. Questions from the gallery? No questions from the gallery. Someone like to move the recommendations? Councillor Fuller, Councillor Bussell. Any discussion? Councillor Fuller.
I'd just like to thank the Volunteer Audit Advisory Committee for their effort in putting together this work and looking over it for us.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Any other discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? The motion is carried. Now move on to community wellbeing, 14.1. Jamie.
There we go. Thank you, Mr Mayor. The report tonight is presented to Council for endorsement of appointments to a number of our Section 86 Specials Committees of Management. So we have a number of committees that run throughout our municipality that help Council and the community oversee the management and maintenance of a number of our facilities. So tonight we have before Council recommendations for appointments to the following committees, which is the North Wangaratta Sports Reserve Special Committee, the Carball Memorial Hall and Recreation Reserve Special Committee, the Edai Upper Hall and Recreation Reserve Special Committee, and the Whitfield Recreation Reserve Special Committee.
Thank you. Any questions from the gallery? Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Fuller, Councillor Amery. Any discussion? Councillor Bussell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to thank the people who nominate for these Section 86 committees, because it's really important that these volunteers put their hands up for these communities, and 3 of these are in the Great Southern Land, and I think the people are to be commended for doing that work. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any other discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Motion's carried. 15.1, infrastructure services.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This piece of roadway, was previously named Bullawa Place by Council in April 2016, as suggested by the Bullawa Cultural Trail Committee at that time. However, the Bullawa Cultural Trail itself had not been named, even though it had been constructed and officially opened prior to the naming of Bullawa Place. This led to a duplication of names, which is prohibited, and a renaming of the roadway was suggested by the Geographic Names Registrar. The new roadway name is proposed to be Mungie Place, and this is recommended by the Place Naming Committee, and the recommendation is that Council advertise to rename the roadway as Mungie Place.
Any questions from the gallery? Yes. Excuse me, would you please come to the... And there's a little button there that you turn on. Down the bottom. Just give us your name and...
Oh, Elaine Jacobson. Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just wondering what Mungie means. Is it relevant to our Pangarang community?
It means Murray Cod, and the local Indigenous people were consulted.
They've had
in the
input.
naming.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Curry, Councillor Benton. Any discussion? I declare the motion carried. 15.2.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This item is the Municipal Emergency Management Plan Review 2017. The Municipal Emergency Management Plan was last subject to review and adoption by Council in 2014. The current plan expires at the end of November 2017, and the revised plan is required to be adopted by Council before this date. The revised MEMP incorporates a range of changes for emergency management at the state, regional and municipal level that have occurred since 2014. The changes include reference to Emergency Management Victoria, recent changes to the Emergency Management Manual of Victoria, including revised state emergency response and state emergency relief and recovery plans, and changes to regional and municipal emergency management arrangements. The recommendation is before you on the screen, and that is that Council endorses the draft Municipal Emergency Management Plan and places it on consultation, out for consultation, and adopts it at a future meeting.
Any questions from the gallery? Someone like to move the recommendation? Move Councillor Amy, second Councillor Ruiz. Any discussion? I'll put the motions carried. 15.3.
Item 15.3 is Oven Street, King George V Gardens concept designs following consultation. This report is presented to Council to provide a summary of the findings from the community consultation undertaken for the CBD Master Plan project, Oven Street and King George V Gardens. Based on the submissions received, a revised concept has been developed for the project. This is presented for endorsement by Council prior to the commencement of detailed design. Some of the changes in response to the consultation were the removal of barbecue facilities, removal of interactive art, installation of lighting in Oven Street and path lighting in King George V Gardens, additional seating within the gardens, changes to the performance stage and parking as per the current concept. The recommendation is that, I better read the recommendation, just excuse me, that Council ratifies the way in which community consultation has influenced the development of the revised concept design and the intention to provide the community with feedback on this, including where changes from the original concept may or may not have been made. Part 2 is that Council endorses the revised concept design for the Oven Street and King George V Gardens project as presented to enable the detailed design of the project to be progressed.
Before asking for questions from the gallery, Councillor Benton.
Yes, well, thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move an alternative motion that the Council endorse the revised concept plan, point 1 of it, for the Oven Street King George project to enable the details, design and project to progress. The design to retain 45-degree parking. And point 2, that the Council provide community with feedback on the revised plan and consult the emergency authorities.
Do we need a second of that? I've got a second of that, Councillor Amory. So there's a motion that's been put up by the officers, and now we have an alternate motion. I'll now ask for members of the gallery if they wish to comment.
Mr Mayor, could you just read out what Councillor Benton's motion was? I'll get it right.
Point 1, to endorse the revised concept design plan of the Ovens King George Garden project to enable design project to progress. The design to retain 45-degree parking. 2, to provide the community with feedback on the revised plan and consult with emergency authorities.
Are you now clear, Mr Fox?
Thank you. And Mr. Benton.
Questions from the gallery? Mr Bellis first. Turn the microphone on, please.
Oh, right, thank you. My question is to Councillor Benton. With the recommendation to retain the 45-degree angle parking, how will that affect the number of car parking? I believe a lot of the public concern is the proposed reduction of 17 car parking spaces. Would this new motion retain pretty well all that's there? Thank you.
My understanding is it won't retain all of them because you're going to have a medium pedestrian crossing there that is going to still take a fair percentage of car park, but it enables us to be able to maintain some of the car parks that will be greater than the reduction of 17. I just haven't got a figure in front of me at the moment.
Now, yeah. You. I'm trying to think what her name was.
My question is also to Councillor...
Your name, please, Cassandra.
Cassandra Pollock. My question is also to Councillor Benton regarding this new proposal. How will this new proposal affect the ambition in the current proposal to enhance tree planting along the Upper Street upgrade?
In relationship to the 45-degree parking, I have had a struggle to understand why we've got to have a medium strip down there. However, there's been major development in that area in the past that has been endorsed by previous administration. The community have all said to us in relationship to the car parking to retain. I think there'll have to be some more looking at the reduction of the width of the area in relationship to keeping some of the trees that are there. I do not know whether there's any, and do not believe that we need to probably reduce the amount of trees that have got to be taken out. But to make this project progress, in principle I agree with it, but I have great difficulty with the emergency situation that arises in Wangaratta if we have a blockage in Murphy Street. I've been in the situation of being in Murphy Street with an ambulance up your rear end, trying to get up on top of the medium strip, and someone backing out or getting out of a parallel park. And I think we have another situation we've blocked here. That is the part that I'm more worried about in relationship to. I think the trees that are there could be retained if possible, but there'll be replanting if they're not.
So the proposal you're putting up needs to be made clear as to what percentage of trees that are going to be planted with the proposal will be reduced with your amendment.
I don't think it has to be myself personally, because it's in a revised plan. We can go forward and have a look at it a little bit further down the track. I don't think we have to do it here tonight to start counting trees, how many that we've got to take down and put up.
My point is there is as much community interest in enhanced tree planting on Oven Street as there is in the car parking spaces. Thank you.
Well, I beg to differ, but I'll have to just agree that we disagree.
Any further questions from the gallery?
Hey. Thank you. Brian Fox, and thank you, Mayor Clark, and thank you, Mr. Benton, for your amending the motion. I have put out a yellow sheet which hopefully explains my position and says that and limits the amount of time I'll have to take up with people. That's why I put that out. Now the whole ball game has changed. If we have hopefully no medium strip, which is a real safety concern, through the fire brigade and ambulance and whatever. If Murphy Street is blocked, Oven Street becomes the alternate route. You can't make the alternate route Baker Street. So it is just impractical to do what we're talking about. Now, I know there are people who grab hold of the low-hanging fruit and tell me it's safer for the pedestrians to cross the street. If somebody can tell me when the last person was injured crossing Oven Street, right? I wouldn't be delighted to know somebody's injured, but I've been here all of my life and I've never known anybody to be injured. So I'm saying no medium strip, leave the angle parking alone, but in the same instance, Councillor Clark, I want to say to you that we need a maintenance schedule for the infrastructure we already have in this city, which I believe at the moment does not exist. If anybody likes to look... Please stick to the point. Thank you, Councillor Benton. You've changed the ball game.
Any other questions from the gallery? No further questions? I'd like to move the amended. So the alternative motion has been moved and seconded. The alternate motion has been moved and seconded. So I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Oh, yeah. Sorry.
I might just go first. Thank you, Brian. Just a quick question back to you. In your history of being in Wangaratta, how many times has Murphy Street been blocked? Has Murphy Street been blocked and an alternate route be used? I can't remember it in my time here, but I haven't been here as long as you.
No, I can only remember one, when there was a car carrier up in front of the old post office.
Okay, thank you. Progress is a funny thing in Wangaratta, and progress doesn't accept answers, it questions them. So thank you for your questions and your inquiries there. Mr. Benton's or Councillor Benton's motion did not exclude a medium strip in the centre of the road with more trees to be planted. It was just to consult emergency services to get their opinion. Would that be correct, Councillor Benton?
Yes, at the moment. I'll talk later.
Okay. Progress in Wangaratta has been slow, to put it politely. We did our streetscape back in the late 80s. I was just talking to a few gents here tonight about it. We then did the Riverside project, which we had a lot of people condemning, and now that it's been and constant improvement over the years and future years has seen it grow and develop into a great space for Wangaratta. And I feel the further development of Faithful Street leading further, Faithful Street in Oven Street, out the front of the great coastal complex that we have, which is one of our major retail outlets, will only improve. So there's a lot of good motions there, or points in Councillor Benton's motion, and but progress for Wangaratta is happening. Thank you.
Councillor Curry.
Firstly, I'd ask the other councillors to think very long and hard about this new recommendation, and I would request them to go with the original motion. I'd also like to pass comments on the safety that was just mentioned about when last time somebody was hurt in Oven Street. I don't think you need to look at Oven Street specifically, but people crossing the road, and I think Dean Rees could talk about someone very close that was killed on a road in the main street of Wangaratta, where all the safety things should have been there to save her, but they weren't. So I do find it offensive when people do make blasé quotes that nobody's actually been hurt in that particular area, when it could be anybody's son, anybody's child at any point in time. I think the safety measures that are being putting forward are good. And yeah. Moving forward about the parallel parking, we have the Wangaratta Council pays a lot of money and will continue to pay a lot of money for parking in the multi-car car park. And moving forward, even so forth, we're doing reviews around on car parking later on this year. Correct? Yep. And, you know, I was talking to the Mayor a little bit earlier on, and potentials about adding new car parks potentially in Oven Street. So there are other options out there. If we've got to keep trying to move forward, beautify Wangaratta, make it good for the people that want to shop here and use that park. And what the council are presenting right here, right now, I believe works for Wangaratta. Thank you.
Any other council? Councillor Bussell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. My question is to Councillor Benton.
Can you put your microphone down a bit? Sorry.
Do you envisage having a medium strip with trees planted all the way along it?
If I had the choice, Councillor, no.
Any other question? Any other councillors? Councillor Fuller.
I was just further to Brian's question about people being injured. I believe somebody was actually knocked over by a car just 2 Tuesdays ago, the 5th of September, just near the Olive Health Food shop. So it does happen. Doesn't necessarily get press, but it does happen.
Thank you. You wish to use the right of reply?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to have this motion sidetracked into personalities and safety, because in principle, as I said in the original, in the question to the questioners earlier, that in principle I agree with the development to the point I have always stated all the way along. And being a rural representative, I think I'd be remiss of myself and I didn't put forward the representation of the rural people, because not having public transport, and a lot of the arguments that I've seen in the briefing room have all been put up and projected of municipalities or areas that have public transport at hand. Everybody nearly in this room has come into this town tonight in a car. You've got to find somewhere to park. You've got to be able to, yes, get out and safely walk. I have had concerns over the years, and I have seen when Oven Street first roundabout put in, and we have people that are trying to have a retail area in Templeton Street get his product taken there. He couldn't get the truck around the roundabout. They had to get a chainsaw out to get the roundabout out, because he couldn't get a car carrier down there. You've got other things in retail have got to be brought into that area in relationship to are going to be trucked in. I don't see anybody walking up the street with a wheelbarrow with produce for the retailers, and you've got some retailers there, and even if you're selling coffee, it's still going to come in with a truck. And I think you're going to jam it up by having a medium strip. I know there's been infrastructure, and that's my wrestle with this whole project, is that the amount of money that has been spent previously in putting underground works in there to carry some of the medium strip and the lighting. I do not want to see it derailed. Therefore, I have accepted the concept design. I just believe that the community should have the right to be able to have angle parking. I've had it told to me we can't have angle parking with a medium strip. You've only got to go out in the side of this building and we have angle parking in a medium strip. I am finding it difficult that we've got a situation in Wangaratta where you've got product that's got to come down through the main street. Yes, it doesn't happen, but I don't want it to happen either. And I want to be able to make sure that people can leave the town and come to the town conveniently. And I don't want to have the hassles that I've experienced up Murphy Street when you've got an ambulance or a fire truck and a representative of the northern areas, and you've only got one way out of this town, that's over Owen Street. And I don't want to see an ambulance or a fire truck held up trying to get across that area. That's my biggest
Thank you.
support to it.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. I'll just ask the CEO to read your alternate motion.
So I have it recorded as that Council endorses the revised concept design for the Oven Street and King George V Gardens precinct, but retain angle parking to enable the detailed design of the project to progress. And part 2 is that we provide feedback to the community and consult with emergency authorities.
Right, I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Those against? The motion is lost. Now, someone like to move the original recommendation. Councillor Curry, Councillor Bustle. Is there any discussion? No discussion. I'll declare the motion carried. (15.4) Asset Management Strategy Review.
Asset Management Strategy Review. Council's previous asset management strategy was adopted in 2013 and is scheduled for review every 4 years. The purpose of the strategy is to identify the current state of asset management practice within the rural city of Wangaratta, to establish goals for the desired future state of asset management practice, and to ensure that the asset management strategy remains consistent with current rural city of Wangaratta direction, goals and performance targets. The strategy contains a detailed action plan to manage and maintain Council's infrastructure assets for the next 4 years. The recommendation is on page 39 of the agenda and is to place the draft asset management strategy on public exhibition for a period up to the 20th of October 2017.
Any questions from the gallery? Yes, Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, my name's Terry Kirby. First question I just want to ask, does this look at such mundane things as repairing potholes in roads?
No. The short question is no, it's assets.
Our roads are not an asset.
It does look at the service levels that we are willing to maintain our assets at, so how often that we would do maintenance on them, and we do inspections as well to determine whether an asset is at a certain standard of its life. So it does talk about those things. It doesn't talk about how frequently we would look for potholes. So it's more of a higher level document. There are also asset management plans that sit underneath this document for individual asset
So
types.
you won't let me ask, why is it that council insists on repairing potholes with chewing gum?
Well, I'm not aware of any potholes that have been repaired with chewing
Look,
gum.
I come down to council frequently and go to the front desk and get potholes repaired. And I'll give you an example. The pothole on the Swan Street Bridge just below us, I've come down and had that repaired 3 times in the last 12 months. You're not fair dinkum. Down at Edward Street, there's more potholes than, I think it's Edward Street, the little short street with the park there. There are more potholes there than roadway. It's just disgusting. It's third world country stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the gallery? Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Curry, Councillor Rees. Any discussion? I'll declare the motion carried. 16.1, David, would you indicate what your conflict is, please?
One of the recipients I have in the past volunteered as a volunteer to help with the running of the event.
Thank you. Jackie?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this report is presented to Council to provide a summary of our 2018 Tourism Events Funding Program. The program is run every year and we look at funding projects that maximise economic and community benefits, provide significant branding and marketing opportunities for the region and substantially build the profile of the area and attract visitors from outside of the municipality. Grants are available up to $5,000 for major events, which are typically events that attract over 1,000 visitors, and $2,000 for minor events that attract less than 1,000 visitors. So we have an annual allocation of $32,000 for these events, with $5,000 going to the La Dolce Vita Festival as per a prior council commitment. The advertising this year was open for 5 weeks with 10 applications received. The total amount of those applications tallied $41,680 with an estimated economic value of $5.2 million. Following on from the assessment of these applications, 8 events have been recommended to receive funding, with 2 events not actually meeting funding criteria. So one of these events has got funding through the municipality through another funding program, and the second one that wasn't supported this time round was because it had an educational focus rather than tourism. So the recommendation is that council allocates the $27,000 to fund the following events as part of the 2017-18 Tourism Events Funding Program as shown on the screen.
Thank you. Questions from the gallery? No questions from the gallery. Someone like to move the recommendation? Move Councillor Bussell, second Councillor Benton. Any discussion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a great program, and I want to commend the officers for the process they went through to achieve the result here with these 8 worthy recipients. Also want to thank the More You Action group for the work they did putting in the King Valley Easter Escape, which is a bike ride through the upper reaches of the King Valley. So it's a great program. I can only talk it up because it'll be worth a great deal of revenue to the rural city of Wangaratta. Thank you.
Any other? No other questions? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Motion's carried. Planning Services Review. Just wait till Councillor Fuller gets back.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this report looks at the outcomes of a planning services review that was requested by Council. So we had some external consultants that were engaged to undertake a review of planning services to assess the current operations and develop a framework and implementation plan for creating a positive and sustainable change within the planning services at Council. The review involved quite an amount of consultation, including internally with the team, as well as externally with referral authorities, regular customers, councillors and internal staff, and also included an audit of some of the previously completed files and statistical analysis of benchmark performance against other councils. There are a number of recommendations that were made as a result of this, with a positive change implementation plan having 21 ideal state outcomes and 93 individual actions. These were reviewed, and as a result there have been 15 recommended top priority actions that generally address the resourcing within Council in regards to the number of technical officers we have, existing resources in terms of our hard and soft copy with IT and website, looking at development of rosters and audit program and accurate and timely responses to customers through our customer service system, and looking at more provisional training. There is some existing funding that's already covering off some of the recommendations that have been put forward, and it covers development and implementation of a system for both planning and building. However, there are two top actions that are being considered as the highest immediate benefit, relating to the addition of a full-time planner for 12 months and an additional 2 full-time support officers for 2 years. The idea behind these is that they will enable existing staff to actively engage in implementing some of these actions identified and ensuring that customer satisfaction is met in working with the planning and building services. There is a financial implication for this, with the additional roles needing to be considered at the review of the financial budget through the mid-year. But what the review did find is that while there's no significant issues with the current performance of the planning department, there has been little available time to undertake process improvements, review documentation and work on streamlining planning provisions. And without this additional staffing and resource recommended, it would be difficult for the team to devote time to ensuring these changes can occur. So on that basis, the recommendations provided have been that Council endorse the recommendations of the Planning Services Review, implements the recommendations of the review by referring the cost of engaging an additional full-time planner for 12 months and a full-time support officer for 2 years to its revised budget in 2017-18, and refers the engagement of a second support officer to its 2018-19 annual budget should the CEO consider the appointment necessary to progress and support the priority of the Planning Services Review.
Questions from the gallery? Yes, Anne.
So Anne Dunstan from Tarrawingi. Through the chair, is it possible to have, or is there a perspective through the council that this is going to happen over all departments?
No.
So my reasoning for that is when dealing with the council through business matters, when you don't have the ability for the officer who is working with you, what I would ideally love to see is a flowchart of the council, and if you're working with person X and you're not getting satisfactory service from person X, who is person X's supervisor?
Through the Mayor, we do have an org structure available on the website. It doesn't go down to the full level of detail of all officers. It probably would be quite a simple thing to develop one that showed who was the manager for a particular team and who that manager reported to, for example, which is probably the sort of thing you're looking for. The reality is, though, if people put their request for action through our customer request management system, they'll get allocated to an officer. The system's being improved at the moment, and that there's now an escalation process, so that if something's assigned to Fiona, for example, and Fiona hasn't dealt with it within a required time, it will escalate automatically through our customer request system to the person who Fiona reports to. So that person should therefore either take some immediate action themselves or go back to Fiona and require her to do that. So we certainly prefer things to come in through that system because it gives us the capacity to actually go into the system, look at what the request was, look at any notes that have been made about where a particular thing is up to, and understand who the individual is that's dealing with the matter. So it gives us a lot more transparency and ability to track where something is up to.
There's currently a flaw in that system where the council initiates the action, so the customer doesn't have the ability to create that customer order. Yeah,
I think we're addressing that as an issue so that you can have notifications go to either one or multiple people. So if a councillor, for example, raised a matter on a constituent's behalf, the request could be set up so that both the councillor raising the matter and the person whose behalf it was raised on would both get notifications about when, for example, it was closed off or action was referred to somebody.
You've misinterpreted that. So for an example, can I give you an example of what I'm dealing with? I manage a body corporate within Wangaratta. We have an easement that runs through private property, that drainage has been accessed. We have had an exposed driveway for over 8 months now with a Seedings village. I have had to escalate this to level 3 through research to find who person X's supervisor is Y, and then gone from Y to the person above that. And I can't obtain a customer service reference through the front desk because the council actioned the initial works.
Yeah, and I'm not going to pretend I fully followed all of that. Perhaps it might be better for us to have a conversation after the meeting so I can get a bit more detail.
Yeah, but that's why I was basically asking if that review is going to take place across the board.
Thank you. Any other questions from the gallery? Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Curry, Councillor Ruiz. Any discussion? Councillor Ruiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to, with this review that has been taken on by Council to review the Planning Department and systems and procedures there, I'd firstly like to thank Brendan, our CEO, for helping introduce this. He could see that we were having some problems and concerns with the public on time frames, etc. So in consultation with Brendan, this was suggested and brought to Council, and I think it was a great move forward to do this and introduce this review, and it's come back with some great positive results that can hopefully help Council move forward. The economic development in Wangaratta is the main process of us here at Council, or especially for me, to make our community stronger and vibrant with faster processes, with especially the Planning Department, which is the main driver of economic development through Wangaratta, apart from our new Economic Development Officer that we have. Planning processes need to be faster, quicker and more secure to get these results quicker for Wangaratta rather than going to other towns. So this measure with the employment of more staff to hopefully procure these changes quickly and for customer satisfaction to be a lot higher. So thank you for the Council for approving it. Thank you.
Councillor Curry.
I'd just like to agree with everything that Dean just spoke about. I'd also like to say it's a very rare occasion that I support anything outside of budget. But in this particular case, I think it's something that Council has spoken about for quite some time, and the recommendations that have been made are very, very good, and I think all councillors are on board with those recommendations, and it's only to improve the service and everything that the ratepayers are looking for and people within economic development, and just trying to improve Wangaratta and their own lives with planning and so forth. And the recommendations are fantastic, and I just like to say I fully support them.
Any other councillors wish to speak? I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour? The motion's carried. Item 19, records of assemblies of councillors.
Thank you, Chair. As is the case each month, there are a series of councillor assemblies that have happened over the course of August and September. Those dates and types of meetings are listed there, and the recommendation is that Council receives those Assembly of Council reports.
Any questions from the gallery? No questions from the gallery. Someone move the recommendation. Councillor Benton. Councillor Curry. Any discussion? Declare the motion carried. There's no notice of motion, no urgent business, public question time. You state your name and your town, please.
John Kirby of Moyu, representing the Moyu Action Group, along with George Snowling and Neil Jarrett. We would like to thank Council for its ongoing support in looking after the infrastructure and events in and around Moyu. For example, mowing of parks, streets, sweeping and collecting our rubbish, and maintaining signage, as well as supporting the Easter Escape, King Valley Easter Escape. That has been excellent. We have a question for the Director of Infrastructure that relates to the proposed curbs and channel work within Moyu. At a recent meeting with Councillor Bussell on the 12th of September, we were advised that plans and specifications for these works were still being prepared. Questions are, when will these plans be made available to the residents of Moyu for review and comment? And also, when is it proposed that these works will be carried out?
Are you able to answer that, Ruth?
I can give an update on that. I believe one of our officers has a meeting with you on Monday, and I believe he is the best person to know when the time frame is and what the plans will be. So okay. Is that?
Well,
do you know about that meeting, John?
No, I don't actually.
Okay, well, I'll just confirm that. But I know that I have spoken to him about the plans for the drainage and asked for a time frame. And I know through Councillor Bussell that has been a need for the residents to know. So I think that might be answered for you on Monday. But I will just confirm that is happening.
Who would be that person?
That would be Ben Thomas.
Okay, thank you.
Who I think has already met with you on a previous occasion.
Very good, very good. Well, we'd like to say that, many residents of Moyu have had pretty good interaction with North East Water over a sewage system that's being put in place there at the moment, and I just think that that if Council looks at the way they have done business with us, personally I think it's been really well done and we've been well communicated with. Just thought I'd mention that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Fox, I think you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brian Fox. I'd like to know whether the council has made any application to any authority they have to lower the speed limit in the central business district to either 40 or 30 k's an hour, because there will be no safety issues if we get it down to 30.
Through the Chair, our infrastructure team has been working with Vic Roads, who are the relevant authority on this issue for a while now. What we're trying to do is put a comprehensive plan together for the CBD, which looks at things like speed limits, looks at locations and types of pedestrian crossings, and looks at where we might need to make alterations to some of our existing crossing points. And rather than deal with that on a piecemeal type approach, we're actually working with VicRoads to develop a comprehensive plan for the CBD, which hopefully would be approved. So those discussions are pretty well advanced, and I think are generally pretty positive. So whilst I can't put an exact time frame on it, I would hope that we'd have a kind of approved, agreed position on that relatively soon. Part of that plan does consider whether all or part of the CBD might be better signposted at 40 kilometres an hour rather than the existing restrictions. So we just need to work through the detail of that.
Thank you, Brendan. However, I look at Oven Street and outside St Pat's School and where Cathedral College is across, that is 40 k's. I can't for the life of me understand why with the stroke of a pen you can't make it from the highway down to the View restaurant. Just so easy. Thank you.
Saw a hand go up there. It's on.
It's on? Okay. Thanks, Mayor. So Phil Haynes is my name. I asked a question at a previous meeting around would the council be putting forward a submission to the Regional Development and Decentralisation Inquiry, which the Australian Government's undertaking. So just keen to know if that submission has been made, and if it has, can you share the copy with ratepayers, please?
Thanks, Phil. We did lodge a submission. We were advised by Cathy McGowan's office yesterday that there's, I think, 100-odd submissions being made, which is perhaps in excess of what was being expected, and therefore they were a little slow to get all of those submissions onto their website. But I think Cathy's advice was that by early next week they expected all submissions to be publicly available on their website, and there's certainly no reason why we can't put our own submission on ours.
Thank you.
Yes, Anne.
Anne Shaw. At the August Council meeting, Council endorsed the development of a gaming policy, including community and stakeholder consultation. I'd just like to ask what the timelines are for the development of that policy, please.
Thank you. So the timelines for that are we're at the moment coming up with a communication strategy that we'll present to Council soon. Expecting that consultation will start in the next 4 weeks, and that will run for a period of 4 weeks as well, and we'll do a number of different processes for that. Then the development of the policy will start. I guess one of the things we really want to make sure is that we're consulting with both our community but also organisations and bodies that can help inform us from a policy position at a state and national level around implications around gaming, both at a social level and an economic level. So we want to have that information right as well, and then obviously use that to support the information that we get from our community. So I anticipate it'll take probably 3 months before you see it back up here at Council.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? There's no other questions. We have one item of confidential business which we will need to go into the other room for, but once I imagine that's only going to be 3 or 4 minutes, so if you'll excuse us for a few minutes just to go in there, and a confidential item, and I can say it's to do with the purchase of land. Yeah. Can I have someone move that we move into confidential? Councillor Fuller and Councillor Reeves. No further business. I'd now like to declare the meeting closed at 7:14. And thank you all for your attendance.
Mr Mayor, are you going to tell us what the decision was?
No. It's a confidential matter.
Righto. I thought once they made a decision, it wasn't
He's going to get into me tonight, isn't he?
Probably.